President Trump saying Iran already has the U.S. terms of the nuclear deal in their hands, and the clock ticks on a military strike. This as the president declares a national emergency over Cuba. We go now live to NTD's Washington correspondent, Mari Otsu, standing by again for us. Good evening, Mari. What can you tell us?
Steve, good evening. That's right. And this is all coming less than a month after the U.S.'s successful capture of former Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro. And President Trump is doubling down on that crackdown of what the White House calls foreign adversaries hostile to the U.S.'s founding values. And this is as a pressure mounts on Tehran to accept a nuclear deal. And President Trump says that the U.S. today has fully laid out the expectations for that deal. And he says that Iran wants to make that deal. Also today, the U.S. Treasury sanctions several Iranian regime officials for, quote, violent repression and corruption. In other words, for the brutal crackdown on anti-Iranian regime protesters. And President Trump has said that he's told Iran repeatedly in the past months that in order to avoid a military action as U.S. forces build up there in the Gulf, it needs to do two things. One, no development of a nuclear weapon, and two, stop killing protesters. Take a look.
Giving Iran any kind of deadline to make a deal before potentially taking
Only
military
they
action?
know for sure. You know, they have to float someplace. They might as well float near Iran.
This coming as President Trump warns that the armada headed toward Iran is larger than the one that was sent to Venezuela. The War Secretary confirming the Pentagon's prepared for possible action.
We have a lot of very big, very powerful ships sailing to Iran right now. And it would be great if we didn't have to use them.
We're having to rebuild how our enemies perceive us. And when President Trump said we're not getting a nuclear Iran, you won't have a nuclear bomb.
The president has repeatedly threatened military intervention if Iran continues to kill anti-regime protesters.
That regime is probably weaker than it has ever been. The protests may have ebbed, but they will spark up again in the future because this regime, unless they are willing to change and or leave, have no way of addressing the legitimate and consistent complaints of the people of Iran who deserve better.
Meanwhile, President Trump's declaring a national emergency over Cuba, threatening tariffs on nations that provide oil to the communist regime.
Are you trying to choke off Cuba?
I don't know. The word choke off is awfully tough. Cuba is a failing nation. And you have to feel badly for Cuba. We have a lot of Cuban Americans who really were treated very badly, and they'd probably like to go back. I think Cuba will not be able to survive.
In the order, he blasts the regime for harboring adversaries, spreading communist ideology across the hemisphere, persecuting dissidents, and threatening the U.S.'s national security. The order says Cuba aligns itself with, quote, numerous hostile countries, transnational terrorist groups, and malign actors adverse to the United States, naming China, Russia, Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah.
Will you make a public commitment today to rule out U.S. regime change in Cuba?
Regime change?
Yes.
Oh, no, I think we would love to see the regime there change. We would like to. That doesn't mean that we're going to make it change, but we would love to see it change.
The order also explicitly spells out that the Cuban regime continues to spread its communist ideas, policies, and practices across the entire Western Hemisphere, thereby endangering the foreign policy of the United States. Steve, back to you.
Thank you for that update, Mari. We'll be checking back in with you later in the show to hear about the president's recent moves with regard to Iran and Cuba.